and I'm really honored and privileged to be here, to be invited as a visiting scholar here. So, like I said, I know Professor Wright since, okay, so you all already know all this. So let's start with this first session. So this is, the first session is about introduction to social network research, yeah. So here's the agenda for today's presentation. Okay, it's working now. So first thing, something about me, my introduction. About AIT Thailand, I did my PhD from Asian Institute of Technology, Thailand. In year 2012, got my PhD in management. And then we will talk something about social networks, some background, and some a section about, is it working, the mic? Causality and social network research and management, and some other insightful information about social networks. You might be already knowing most of this, but okay, so this is something about me. Yeah, some of my hobbies. Yeah, research, that's at least what I claim. That's one of my hobbies. Second is playing and watching cricket. There's a very popular sport in my region. So very English kind of a sport. Yeah.
So who won the match this year, Pakistan or India?
There was no match between Pakistan or India this year.
Okay.
They're not playing each other.
The big one.
Yeah. But last time in the Champions Trophy, in the final, we won.
Okay.
Yeah. But we lost in the group stages and we won the final match against them.
Oh.
Yeah. And obviously Hollywood movies, they are very popular in Pakistan. Oh yeah. Currently I'm an assistant professor at Institute of Management Science at University of Balochistan, Quetta. Balochistan is a province in the west part of Pakistan. So this is, the University of Balochistan is the premier public sector university in that province. And it's situated in Quetta, that is the capital of the province, yeah.
So about how large is the university? Students?
In terms of students, I think it's maybe 10,000-15,000 students from all over the province. The province is very underdeveloped, and the students, they come from very poor backgrounds. So and they have this only one university as their premier option of studying. So most of them, they come here at this university. Yeah. So, and what else? Yeah. Coming back to my hobbies, Hollywood movies, obviously very popular in Pakistan. Console games, PS4s and this stuff. Maybe I'm too old for that, but still. And some music, metal kind of music, yeah. So I know many American bands and stuff, but yeah. And something about AIT Thailand, I got a scholarship for PhD to pursue my PhD at AIT Thailand in year 2008. So I got my PhD in year 2012. And there's some information about some QS rankings and some stuff. So you may be interested or not. Anyways, I'll skip this. Let's start formally with the session then. So let's start with some background of social networks. Okay, so this is a graph. You can see some exponential growth. This is social network analysis searched in Web of Science, SNA, or social network analysis. We search this keyword on Web of Science, and then it's a graph taken from elsewhere. And another source, I forgot to cite the source here. I'll cite that if we build a database of some lectures. If I have to upload these lectures, before uploading I will put the source here. But you can see it's massive growth of social network analysis coming up, and it's from 1985 to 2010. Yeah. So there are many other graphs like this available from various indices they have plotted, and every graph shows this sort of exponential kind of growth. Yeah. So the first thing is SNA, or social network analysis. Is it a method or is it a theory? So I got some traditional definitions from first definitions from Scott's book, a very popular book on social network analysis. It says that social network analysis emerged as a set of methods for the analysis of social structures, methods that specifically allow an investigation of the relational aspects of these structures. So Scott says that it's more of a method than theory. But Borgatti, a very famous social network analyst from University of Kentucky, so I've actually met him at Sunbelt in 2014. And I have been using a lot of stuff from his book. I have this book here, which I also recommend. It's more about social networks in management, but I don't know how will that, but the concepts work in social networks in education as well, yeah? So Borgatti says that social network theory provides an answer to a question that has preoccupied social philosophy from the time of Plato: how autonomous individuals can combine to create enduring functioning societies. So he says it's more of a theory than a method, you know. So let's see this. There is a matrix in front of you. This is conventional research, where we actually talk about actors and their attributes. Yeah? So we have some actors here in the rows, and their attributes like gender, age, height, and weight in the columns. So that is more of a traditional research. In social network research, we say that individual characteristics are only half the story. It's actually the interactions. We talk about actors and their interactions and their relationships. See? So you can see the graph on the right hand side. It depicts a sociogram with nodes and links. We'll discuss these basics as we move on in the lecture. So this is one of the technical definitions of social networks. It's a set of socially relevant actors or social units, which are interchangeably called agents, nodes, points, vertices, connected by one or more relations, links, edges, ties. Relations are also called links, edges, or ties. So three important aspects are the nodes or social units comprising the networks, or actual or potential relationships among members of the network, and some network boundaries, which we will talk about in detail in comments session. I think it will be session number 3, where we talk about research design and data collection. We talk about whole networks and ego networks. Yeah? So we have some boundaries which are delineated on basis of some explicit criteria or some researcher defined criteria, like for example all faculty members in ELDF department, a set of ties between, set of friendship ties or advice, or who seeks advice from whom in ELDF department. So this ELDF is our network boundary. We will discuss that in detail as we move on. Okay, so who are the actors actually? Examples of actors can be individuals, or they can be collectivities. Individuals they can be persons, they can be animals, and collectivities they can be organizations, department, teams, political units like cities, nations, societies, and they can be troops or species. Yeah, so these all can be nodes in a network. And these are some basic network components. You can see. Do we have laser in this? Yeah.
Yeah, we should. I don't know if it'll.
But it will not project on this.
The screen is a
Yeah, this is screen. Yeah. Okay, so.
But you can move over on point.
Yeah.
We learned that early on. The pointers don't work.
It works on the projector, yeah, on the wall and everything, yeah, it's working. But here it doesn't work, yeah. So you can see these are the round circles are the nodes, and this one is the link or relationship. So we have some basic network components. When two nodes are connected, it's called a dyad. 3 nodes, triad, and then we have a clique of size 4 when every node is connected to every other node. This is a clique of size 4, Yeah. And then we have some network configuration like the hypothetical star network. And then we have a chain or circle network. See? So these kind of configurations we can see in a network. But these are all like hypothetical kind of structures. We see as we move from left hand to right hand side, we are moving from more centralized to less centralized networks. The star network, we say it's 100% centralized. We'll discuss when we discuss whole networks. This is a whole network concept, centralization. So this star network has a centralization score of 1 or 100%. Anyways, as we move from left hand to right hand, we move to more decentralized network structure. But this is something, some basic components or basic network concepts. Yeah, let's move to the level of analysis. This is taken from Borgatti's book, page number 3. This book, particular book, we have a new edition out for, I think, year 2018 also. Yeah, which discusses the rhythms and sounds in more detail. Yeah. So anyways, we are talking about the level of analysis in a network. We have three levels of analysis. One is dyad level. And this term here is a computer science term. I discussed with Borgatti. I was confused about this one, O raised to power n square, yeah? So n is the total number of nodes in the network. Anyways, we are not going into detail. This is it's a computer science term. It says order of n raised to power 2, yeah? So in dyad level, we are interested in studying the relationships between, the pairwise relationships between actors, yeah? For example, we say faculty members whose offices are close to each other, maybe they are more likely to form friendship ties, or they are more likely to form, they are more likely to communicate, they are more likely to interact. So it's like a matrix. If I draw, I think we have a detailed discussion about that in a later session when we talk about that is data analysis 3. When we talk about network hypothesis testing. Yeah. So we're talking about something like this in the dyad level of analysis. So this is one matrix. We'll talk about in detail what a matrix. So we have actors here A, B, C, and D. And A, B, C, and D. So these are the people. You say these are the people. Maybe A and B have their offices are close by, anything 3 meters or something. A and C, they are further apart, 6 meters. A and D, and so onwards. This matrix gets filled. So this is the dyad level of analysis. And then if we are testing some hypothesis that, okay, proximity leads to friendship ties. So we have the same set of actors here, A, B, C, and D. So maybe we have a 1 here. Maybe A and C are further apart. They are not friends. Yeah? So this is dyad level of analysis. So second level of analysis is the node level of analysis, in which we are dealing with the traditional. Yeah, thank you so much. The second level of analysis is the node level of analysis, in which we talk about the traditional vectors. So if we have nodes like A, B, C, D. So I think, excuse my handwriting maybe. So we have just a hypothetical network here, node A, B, C, and D. And maybe we have a centrality score for each node here. So A has a centrality score of 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah? Degree centrality. We'll discuss about that because it's connected to 4 actors, yeah? So B has a centrality score of 1, 1, 1. So this is node level of analysis we are talking about. So, and maybe we have another measure called performance measure for each of these nodes. In my research study, for example, in a co-authorship network, I talked about centrality of authors in a co-authorship network leads to better research performance. Yeah, so that was node level of analysis, which I studied in my research. Okay, the third level is the network level. The whole network, it's a unit. See, if we have, say, 100 teams or 100 networks, see, so if you have 100 teams working together on a project, so it means that there are 100 networks, and then we have a single measure for, it's similar to the node level of analysis, but in the node level of analysis you see the vector, in the vector columns you have the nodes. So in the whole networks you will have the networks, network 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up till 100 teams. And if I say density, for example density, it's a whole network measure. Density of network 1 leads to better solution, better time to solution, or they solve a certain problem very more quickly than the teams which have low density score. Yeah, you get this point? So network level, node level, dyad level, node level, and network level. So
Any questions? I mean, we want to make this interactive. So.
No, I mean, it seems to make sense. It's from what I'm understanding of a dyad level, the n squared or whatever is because you're talking about interactions between
yeah.
and then the node level and the network level, you're talking about them as holistic single groups that things are happening. Yeah.
You can see the order here. That's O into n raised to power 2.
Right.
And here at node level it's O n raised to power 1. N is the number of nodes in the network. At the network level it says n raised to power 0, that is 1.
Right.
Yeah, so one whole unit.
Correct.
Of analysis. Yeah. So we have these examples here in the slide as well. You can see that as well. Both types of examples, both concerning the individuals and collectivities both. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that you can move to levels of analysis at triad and click and so on, that it would be n cubed, n to the fourth, and so on. Would that be the logical extinction of that?
You see, sorry, what was going
Okay, so if I were to look at level of analysis and I were to take this, if I were to see a triad, I would say that would be to the third power, and I could do an analysis that would be visualized as a cube.
Yeah. In 3D, three-dimensional or something, 3D space.
Which can actually be particularly difficult, but yeah.
But mostly in management research or even in education research, I think we have these 3 levels of analysis, and the hypotheses are tested at either at the dyad level or the node level, or the network level, or mixed dyad or monadic. This node level is also known as monadic level, dyad or monadic level. So we have some hypotheses which are mixed between dyad. We will discuss that in session.
At the dyad, but you might also be looking at individual nodes within that dyad.
Yeah. So and how to do? There is a process how to do that. There's a methodology which actually converts that. If you have a monadic hypothesis, mixed dyadic and monadic hypothesis, actually we convert the monadic part into the dyadic part. So if you say we have people of the same gender, so that is a node level node level thing. It's a vector, yeah. But on the other side, we say if people of the same gender, they tend to form. Are they likely to form friendship ties? So on this side, on the dependent side, we have the dyad level of analysis. So what to do in that case? So we will. That is upcoming in session 6 in more details. We actually convert that vector into matrix. So A and B, if they have the same gender, it's 1. So A and B, if they have different gender, that's 0. Yeah. So it's a binary kind of a matrix, or we can have race, ethnicity. Yeah. So we have these examples here, like the individual level of analysis. I already discussed proximity. Yeah. And collectivities. Firms with similar organizational cultures more likely to form joint ventures. Yeah. So it's again a dyad level of analysis. Then at node levels, we are talking about centrality and performance, something. Yeah. And then the network level, I already discussed about the teams. So you have like the 100 teams, 100 different scores of density or.
So the question you're asking defines the node level of analysis.
Yeah.
So you have to have clarity on the question that you're asking about that social network to determine which level of analysis.
Which level of analysis you're interested in working with, yeah. So the other slides talks about what type of relationships are we looking at. Again, taken from Borgatti. His book, relationships can be based on similarities, relational roles, relational cognition, or relational events like people of, I already discussed about that proximity thing, people in the same proximity, maybe they can, same spatial and temporal space, yeah. Participation, they can if people are co-participating in events or co-participating in clubs, or they are members of the same club, they are supposed to be connected. So they can be connected via this participation sort of phenomena. Attribute, same gender, you already discussed about that, same gender, same race, it's called homophily or even heterophily, yeah. And then we can have these relational roles, relationships by relational roles, kinship, friend of, boss of, competitor of, and in terms of affective likes, like-dislike ties. Perceptual ties, knows of, sees as, happy. Interactions, souls to, talk to, help with. And then flows, flowing of information, money, transactions, beliefs, yeah?
A quick question. I'm wondering for Mike and Blake, which of these relations, or how would you phrase a relation for the research that you're thinking about or involved in?
I would be looking at, for example, in school community councils, you would have the, I would see the members of the school community councils are co-participants in that social network, in that activity. So they would share that similarity. But they may also share other roles, relational roles. It may be that members of the school community council are also co-members of the PTA, or that the principal of the school is the principal of the children to whom the members of the school community council are parents of. So that there might be, where I could see some complexities developing there between and among those different relational groups, as well as the similarities that they share in terms of that experiential affiliation.
Yeah.
And then depending on, in terms of affect, depending on if there are members of the school community council who feel that the principal is doing a good job versus the principal doing a poor job, that then they would divide out that way as well. And then if they happen to interact socially, be members of the same church congregation or whatnot, that would add another level of complexity to the network as well.
Okay. So as far as I can see, you can see multiple networks operating within the same council. That is multiplexity. That is, we will also discuss. I think I have a slide on that as well. That is really the current research is now very focused on multiplexity aspects of networks. So same set of nodes having different relationships, more than one relationship at the same time. So can co-worker or a friend. It's coming up in one slide. Can be a co-worker and a friend at the same time. And even ambivalent relationships, positive or negative relationship at the same time. Yeah. So that is also studied these days.
Blake?
Yeah. So I study parenting children with disabilities, and I'm doing stuff with this in Southeastern Europe, in traditional
Southeastern Europe?
Yeah,
Okay.
so like Bosnia, Herzegovina, Albania.
Okay.
And so there are some attributes, some similarity things that we've looked at in regards to gender, especially in these more traditional cultures,
Yeah.
but also ethnic grouping as well. So whether or not, like which culture within Bosnia and Herzegovina they fall into, but also in the affective side, we have trust and a preference for different parents and things like that. So, relational roles, which parent shows up to our meetings.
So are you actually planning to conduct like typical network analysis on such relationships?
Yeah, but mainly like an egocentric kind of network. So yeah, so just around each parent,
Around each
responding
parent.
to
Yeah.
and relating that mainly to child behavior and things like that, and family
Okay.
well-being.
Yeah.
So,
We have a whole chapter on ego networks in this book as well.
okay.
It defines, and the methods of data collection are somewhat different than whole networks.
Mhm.
It's a very good chapter in this book, chapter number. Okay, I'll tell you about that. It's chapter 15
Okay.
in this book. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it also has a specialized software, EgoNet, for analysis of egocentric data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So, USANET can also work for you, but they have a specialized software, and they have some specialized technique like name generators, name interpreters, or name interrelators. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a session coming up, session number 3, when we talk about data collection, data, and social network data. Okay, so next slide is about, this talks about relationships among firms. So me and Professor Hyde were just discussing in our office. We just discussed in our office about universities getting connected. Yeah, so if universities are as, I had a question while I was taking a walk in the morning. There was a question in my mind. So firms, okay, they connect. As entities, they can connect in trade association, joint ventures, alliances, selling products and this stuff. How can universities be connected? Say if they sign MOUs with each other. If you consider firms as nodes, specifically firms as entities,
Or just
how can they be?
organizations, yeah.
So I have a question. How can they be connected? Like, when firms can be connected, joint ventures, alliances, members of trade associations and stuff. Can you see universities being connected?
Certainly.
How can, I mean...
Well, I mean, I see it more at maybe a department level, but I mean, I could also say that if they share, let's say, for example, the University of California system, they share a common governing board, and so they're all connected because they're all governed by a board of governors.
Okay.
So but if you're talking about informally, let's say like Brigham Young University and another university, it may be that they're connected because they share within their colleges and then within their departments, maybe members of their faculties who are part of similar research organizations. So for example, the American Educational Research Association would have affiliates that come from those different universities. Would that be that they share that common organizational membership among some members of their faculty, and then if you were to move it up a level of abstraction to that whole university is connected to that other whole university because there happen to be faculty members who are affiliated with that organization? Is that?
That is actually universities connecting through the members. There's a second point. The firm, like the firms connecting via their individuals. Like for example, we have interlocking directorates. So CEO of organization A sits on the same board as CEO of organization B.
Yes.
We are studying one network. This is Armenian network. Me and Professor Height and another researcher from Canada. So we are studying a interlocking directorate network.
It's more intimate than it would be literally that the activities of the one university have an effect on the.
Or maybe University of Balochistan is connected to, or my department IMS. Or you say at university level, University of Balochistan is connected to BYU through a co-authorship tie between me and Professor Height.
Right.
Yeah. So that is through the individuals. Yeah.
Right. There we go. Okay.
So my question was, if we consider the firms, like if we can consider firms as nodes, firms are nodes and they are connected through like strategic alliances, for example.
Yes.
So they are directly connected. In this case, firms are entities. Yeah. And firms can also be connected by their members, like the interlocking directorates, So the universities, second point is clear, through co-authorships, through their members, universities can be connected. But can they be connected as entities somehow? Formal agreements, MOUs, So I was thinking about that, maybe MOUs or something else.
So would we say
that can be a very good idea to explore If or our university is connected or they are autonomous bodies, they are not connected at all as entities.
You could take it to the level of schools.
Right, see,
as
that was-
organizations.
Right.
Yeah.
And schools can be connected formally, like in feeder structures,
Uh-huh.
or in grants, where they're all applying for a grant and they work together on a particular grant.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of two-mode kind of a network, maybe.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I was
Different
wondering if
grants.
our community partnership, the 5 partnership schools, they're connected to each other independent of BYU, or is BYU the kind of the?
Both, I think they're probably,
So he's talking about, we have a formal relationship with 5 school districts in the state where we
Okay.
actually exchange both resources in terms of our students working there.
Mhm.
They provide finances for their teachers to get their masters and doctorates here,
Okay.
et cetera. So those 5 districts, but Mike's question is, are they
Yes.
connected outside of the partnership?
Correct, yeah.
Mm.
So is the partnership
Mm.
only in existence because it's mitigated, or it's, there's a word I want, but anyway, I'll use that one, through their common affiliation with BYU, or is
So
it, or
BYU
do they exist as an independent
BYU
5?
mediates the connection
Correct.
to the 5.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, those are ways
Yeah.
that we can look at
Yeah.
these relations, yeah.
Relations. So that was what this slide was all about. A relation among firms. If you consider firms as nodes, so they can be connected directly as entities or via their individuals. Yeah.
Right, okay.
By the way, Kamal, there are universities, particularly, for example, in China, that have not only MOUs with other universities, but they now have, like Julie and I are officially appointed at a Chinese university as distinguished professors.
Yeah.
And so the Chinese government has given universities tremendous amounts of money
Okay.
to create formal relationships, not only with other universities, but with professors at other universities in relatively long-term commitments, in our case, 3 years.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not something that a lot of countries are doing, but China is. They seem to be resource rich right now.
Mm.
And so those academic networks, they're being very strategic in who they reach out to. And internally to China, it's almost a competition between universities on who has connections with which universities.
Yeah.
Whether they're a university, a national level, state level, or private institution.
Mhm.
And the Chinese government has different funding structures for each of those.
Okay. Yeah.
another example for
Kind of
schools.
international kind of university collaboration network, something.
Right.
Yeah.
For schools, you could do, for example, an administrative network such that you could see which teachers have worked under
Mhm.
different principals. And as principals move around,
Yeah.
and you look at that at a school level, you can then say, these teachers know that principal, those teachers know this principal. So there are conduits created through this informal history
Okay.
that they've had.
Or as a teacher at one school becomes a principal at another
Uh-huh,
school.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you could do that at the school level,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, this was a slide about relation among firms. Yeah, and we already talked about multiplexity. So nodes can have more than one relationship at the same time. Like for example, people can be friends and co-workers at the same time. We already discussed about this. So let's go to the formal representation. How are the social networks represented mathematically? This is a matrix, a binary, undirected matrix that is symmetric. So you see, for example, it's a friendship network, or we can even say that it's a co-authorship matrix. Hi, sir.
Scott, this is Dr. Kamal.
Yes, well, I guess I did.
Hi, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow also.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wanted to catch some of
Uh,
this.
He's in our
Thank you very much.
department, and-
Scott Farron.
Scott. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So should we proceed? Yeah.
Yeah, and Julie has brought me along on some of these basics, so I'll try to catch up.
Okay. Yeah, we are just way early.
Thanks, sorry to interrupt that way.
Blake had a
So-
question.
Yeah, I have a question about this. So, is this based on like report? I get this is probably just hypothetical data.
Yeah.
But is this based on self-report? Like, who's reporting the friendship there? Is it Sally reporting the friendship with Dick?
Yeah.
And Dick reporting the friendship with Sally?
Yes. Yeah.
Because you could see a scenario where some people would say, "Oh yeah, so and so is my friend," but they're really not.
Yeah. This is an example
The
of
other person says
yeah. It's a kind of a survey in which a question is asked that, okay, tell me who's your friend within your department. So Tom reports Sally and Fred. So mostly, this is like you said, it's a hypothetical matrix. So it can be undirected as directed as well. We will talk about directed and undirected this concept further in the slides. Like for example, Tom considers Sally as her friend, but Sally doesn't consider Tom as her friend. So there'll be a zero in that case. But in this case, we say okay, friendships are reciprocated or something. Yeah. So it's like it's a binary, undirected matrix, and it's symmetric along the diagonal. You see, if you fold it like this, it will be symmetric. So Tom reports Sally and Fred, and then you can see Fred is also reporting Tom and Dick. Yeah, see. So Dick is reporting Sally and Fred, and Sally is reporting Tom and Dick. Yeah. So this is kind of who is friends with whom. Yeah. So this is a binary matrix. 0 is not a relationship and 1 is a relationship in this case. So this is another diagram. Again, it's the same thing. You can see this sort of a network in which Tom, Fred, Sally, and Dick, Alice, these are all nodes, and the link between them is some sort of a relationship. So nodes represent people, lines represent relationships. So network is a structure. This is all we have discussed about that. Attributes, there can be specific attributes associated with these nodes like gender or race, ethnicity, or departmental affiliation. See? So mostly when we test the hypothesis, most of the times we can, I already talked about the mixed dyadic and monadic hypothesis, but there are attributes also involved. Actually, it's a mix when in social network research. On the dependent or independent side, we can also have these attributes from this conventional research. Like for example, in my research, I studied the co-authorship network and impact of centrality on research performance of authors. And then I had some attributes like gender, departmental affiliation, and university affiliation and what was the third one? Academic age. See, those acted as moderators. So this is about
by the way, one I've always been interested in but can't figure out how to measure it is who was your mentor or chair in your PhD program?
in AIT, in AIT Thailand, it was Dr. Badar.
Yeah. And that would be an interesting attribute. As I've often, because my chair published a lot with the doctoral students that he had.
Yeah.
But there were other chairs that didn't.
Okay.
If you look at a number of my publications, many of them are former students.
All right. Yeah.
But other colleagues at the university, there's some disciplines like art history where you're actually punished if you publish with former students.
Okay.
So some disciplines encourage it, education.
Yeah.
Other disciplines punish it,
Nice.
etc. But I've never found a way to figure out how can I, through some sort of crawling mechanism, find out who was Michael's chair,
Right.
and did Michael ever co-author with his chair? I don't know. So it's always fascinated me in these co-authorships. I would love to be able to see our professors at certain universities or in certain disciplines more likely to co-author with former students.
Well, I
or
think
current
at this point-
students.
Yeah, at this point, I think with digital abstracts, digital dissertation abstracts.
You might be able to crawl that.
Yeah, I think nowadays, I would think it would have been
Google
profound.
operated, maybe.
Say again?
Yeah.
You could just put in a Boolean operator
Yeah,
perhaps.
you'd
and
have
find
to
it.
exactly do that. You'd have to say, okay, for
But
example, if we were to
maybe I
start
could
Michael
expand
and
it.
was.
It's always been one of my daydreams is that I would
See-
love to know.
That would be cool,
Yeah.
to expand it
Intuitively,
to
you can see
those
it.
that
Yeah.
they chaired or were on the committee, because I
Or-
tend to say,
or-
you're doing
that's
this
a good
work?
point.
Well,
Yeah.
I know very well the research because I was on the committee,
Mhm.
so it's gonna be chairs, but I'll bet committee membership too.
Yeah. And-
Because Scott publishes
Yeah.
with a lot of former students
Right.
as well.
But I also recommend that they see each other's work too, and maybe sometimes they ought to publish together.
I think it varies from university to university, the policies, and maybe it varies from student to student as well. In my case, my PhD chair was not that relevant a guy for my research, and I already found Professor Haidt as my mentor. So we published more than I published with my PhD chair. We published two, but he's in two of our papers. The third one is me, Professor Wright, and another guy. Yeah, so I think it, and then that guy, my PhD chair, is publishing a lot with his students, current and former students, because they are more relevant to his area.
Right.
So I think all of these factors play a role in this. Yeah, and I think I can find some good papers from some journals like Scientometrics, which have actually studied this kind of data set, and I think I can find something. Yeah, if I find, I'll share. In the last session on co-authorship networks, I think, on session 7 on Thursday, April 5. Yeah. So okay, so this is about this slide is about the directionality of ties. Like I said, directed and undirected ties. So this one, first one is an example of an undirected tie. So we say Tom and Fred are co-authors. Tom is a co-author of Fred, and Fred is co-author of
Particle physics.
Tom.
Terminology. I'm sorry. It really is. There's gonna be some left twist connect. I'm sorry. This sounds like edges. We're making up terminology for things that didn't used to be studied, and I like it. So sorry, I interrupted.
It's all taken from graph theory because it's SNA is the client of graph theory. So second point is about directed ties. For example, Tom likes Dick, but Dick doesn't like Tom. He doesn't reciprocate, yeah? Or Tom gives money to Dick, Dick doesn't give the money back or something. Gifts, or they exchange gifts, Tom gives a gift to Dick and Dick doesn't give it back, give gift back. And then in the directed network, we have this concept of reciprocity, that Tom likes Sally, Sally likes Tom, yeah? So this is the concept of directionality of ties in the network. So if you plot this on a matrix, you will see symmetric and unsymmetric matrices. Symmetric matrices are undirected, so they are reciprocated, you know, naturally reciprocated.
So to follow up on Blake's question, then the first one can be asserted by just asking one of the two, right? But the second and third relationships require you to ask about the relationship of both.
Yeah.
I would even say with the first one, you don't have to ask either one of them. You could do it simply by
Yeah.
observation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like I would say in that situation, if you're asking about friends, you could ask one or the other of them if they are
Yes.
friends.
The
One
social
would
survey.
consider the other a friend, but if the other one doesn't, then you wouldn't be able to do
Right.
it. But if you observe them acting in
And
friendship.
in Tom's research, where he's doing that egocentric stuff, you can
Right.
ask just the central player.
Right,
Yeah. Just
But-
the ego.
Yeah,
About
but
their
that's
arguments.
going to be undirected.
Yeah.
right, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think it might be related to hierarchy too. I have people in my religious service that I do in my community that I might now and again make contact with them, but I know how much they have to do, and I'll say, don't contact me back. You know, no need. You know, I'm just giving you this information. So sometimes I bet it's also the unidirectional ones are hierarchical too. You know, that we're not exactly on the same level. We're friends, but you're an important friend who's got a lot of other friends, and I recognize it.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's
Yeah.
a hierarchy that
You
we
could
look
at
for.
it in
So
terms
that-
of information flows.
So that gets revealed when we try to collect the social network data from participants. These are the social network surveys. That's session number 3, I think. when I'll talk about the social network data collection. Yeah. So this one, like Steve said, okay, we know in the first one, no need to ask anyone. That is actually asserted. Tom and Fred are co-authors. There is actually not even a social survey. That is more of a secondary data which I'm talking about. Okay, these two co-authored. So that is natural. No directionality of ties. So that is just a simple binary undirected matrix which I'm talking about. Yeah. So, but we'll talk about that. I think I have a question in a slide in which we can think about some things, some networks. What kind of network can be binary directed or undirected?
So I don't know which type, how this would fit, but of course there's some associations, academic associations, like I'm on one book that, yeah, we like each other, maybe that's why they invite me in part, but in part it's just because our association is, we want to do a book on this. This is an area we've decided is important. One for example is a book that we call Legal Principles for Principals of Schools, right? I don't think that's the Principals Legal Handbook. Mm-hmm. And so it didn't just happen organically. We go to the same conferences, but the committee asked for, and then they looked for the experts. But you're not going to invite people that are hard to work with. So I don't know how you would map one like that, where there's an academic association that kind of got it started in a board of trustees or a board of editors, or not board of trustees, and then you get invited. But again, if you're known as someone they don't like to work with, I don't think they invite you. So I don't know how you would do that when you have a superordinate academic association bringing together co-authors. So it's just something to look at. Or I don't know how you would map that.
That will be, I think, an example of a two-mode network. What you're talking, we'll talk about that.
Okay. Right.
These kind of networks which I'm talking about right now are one-mode networks. So there can be two-mode networks, like women participating in events. There is a classical example. Okay, we'll discuss about that in coming slide. Yeah. So maybe your scenario fits in that. Two more networks. Yeah. Okay. So this is now another matrix. You can see tie enumeration valued matrix. This is a valued matrix. Now, what's the difference? And sometimes in social surveys, you just you ask the participants or the actors within the boundary to rank their relationships with each other. Like for example, we say 0 for don't like, 1 for like, and 2 for really like. So it's rank ordering, or like kind of a Likert scale. You give them, and then when you fill in the Likert scale in the matrix, it's something like this. Here, to understand an example, I talk about telephoning. One calling the other per week. How many times? So Tom calls Dick 2 times a week, per week. Or he has called, this particular week Tom has called Dick 2 times. But you can see Dick hasn't called Tom. Yeah? So this is a valued directed matrix, which I'm talking about here. Yeah? So you can see it's not symmetric about the diagonal, and it's also valued. So something like this, if we plot it on the graph, a sociogram will look something like this. So Sally, like you can see, Sally has called Tom 2 times. Tom has called Sally 1 time. Yeah. So similar is this graph. You can see everywhere. So the question was, can you think of a binary directed network? Binary directed network and a valued, second, valued undirected network.
Sorry.
It's okay. Can we think of one?
So yeah,
binary directed network first, and the second is a valued undirected network.
yeah. So if we had a binary directed network, we might say a principal. Sally is Mark's principal.
Can you frame it in a question? What question would you ask?
So, what question would I ask?
A network question.
So well, I would say, what hierarchical relationship do Sally and Mark
Oh yeah.
share?
So
And then
okay.
the answer to that question would be that Sally is Mark's principal.
Sally is Mark's principal, but Sally is Mark's principal, or Mark is not Sally's principal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or who
so
do you-
the direction only goes in the one direction in terms
Yeah.
of the
Or
the type.
who do you call when you have a challenging problem on?
Right. But yeah, and
Correct.
if we're just talking about those two people, then it would be a binary, yeah.
Or who do you?
Binary
but-
is a yes/no answer
Right.
to the question.
Right.
So it's not
Oh, is it-
binary.
So then it wouldn't be who do you call, it says do you call? Do I call Pam when I have a
Do I
question
call
about?
yes or no?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
But you can still ask that as who do you call?
okay,
And I say, I call Mike.
okay.
But I
Yeah.
say, I don't call Steve. I mean, I don't say Steve. So that's a
Uh-huh.
0, you would be a 1.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in other words, if we have a network of all of us in the room and we say, okay, who do you call?
Yeah.
And then we could use each of those, I do call, I don't, I do, I don't, I do, yeah, okay.
So I would be an isolate in such a network
What's it-
right now.
So what's interesting is we did a little study like that for UNESCO
Mhm.
one time when we were there,
Mhm.
because the director of a unit wanted to know who went to whom for advice or help,
Yeah.
and then compare that with what he said was the actual structure.
Yeah.
So what was the stated structure of the organization
Right.
compared to what was the real structure of the organization? And it wasn't even close.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. So they were supposed to have gone to this person to ask those questions, but they virtually never went to that person. They went to someone else.
And second was the valued undirected network.
Again, I guess it's, how often do you call? I'm just trying to think how, again, coming back to the example that you gave, to say, maybe how many times in a semester do you go out to lunch with? And then that could be anywhere from
Yeah.
0 to,
Anytime, and
Yeah,
both
anytimes.
are like both go to lunch 4 times, so 4.
correct,
And
yeah.
in
it
the
could
cell,
be
yeah.
that it could be that at one point in time, 4 people went out to lunch, whereas at another
Yeah.
time 2 did, as another time everybody went out to lunch, so
Yeah.
it would,
So
yeah.
how would you distinguish in that one that it's undirected rather than directed?
To me, it would be about the activity, I guess, undertaken, as opposed to.
Tell me.
Would be
So-
directed, who did you invite to go?
Who did you invite to go would be directed.
Would be
Right,
directed.
yeah,
But
so-
who did you
Yeah.
go to lunch with?
With is undirected.
If I say I went to lunch with Mike,
Right.
Yeah.
well then,
Okay.
Mike clearly went to lunch with me.
Correct.
Yeah, and how many times is valued? Yeah.
Right.
But who created the
Yeah.
invitation to go?
That would be direct.
That would be
directed.
directed.
Correct, okay, yeah.
What I can, the second network I can think of is some co-authorship network. Instead of 1 and zeros, we can have the strength of ties. So one
How many
author, yeah, how many papers have you collaborated in?
Right.
Yeah. So me and Professor Height, we have a tie of 3 or 4.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this depicts the strength of tie. So that will be a valued and undirected network. Yeah. So let's go forward. Yeah, this is it's can be like it's a matrix which shows like the network can be binary or undirected. It can be binary or directed. It can be valued undirected. It can be valued or direct. Valued or undirected and valued or direct. Valued and directed. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 dimensions. Yeah. Okay, so this is the 2 mode network which I was talking about. This is more like when you have 2 distinct sets of nodes. Like, for example, companies sharing board of directors.
Right.
Or we have a classical example which Professor Height also knows this paper. I think I sent it. One of my master's students, she worked on banks and investment segments. So it's banks on the rows, and on the columns we have investment segments. So the banks making investments in various investment segments. Or this is one of the really classical examples. It's called DGG, Davis, Gardner and Gardner Women by Event Matrix, which shows 18 women attending 14 events. So these are two distinct nodes. One set of nodes is events, and the other set of nodes is women.
That's
Yeah?
two mode because they're different.
Yeah, they're
It's
different.
not women to women.
It's not women to women, but it can be studied like this. It's called a bipartite graph. But there are many advancements. It's a whole new set of measures when we talk about two-mode networks. Firstly, we can extract one-mode networks out of these two-mode networks. We can, yeah? So women who attend same events together are connected. So now that will be a one-mode network. Or we can do event by event as well. Or in our case, the paper which we are working on, board interlocking directorates, we have firm by director network, yeah? But actually we're talking about a one-mode network of firms connected with firms through their directors, yeah? So that is converting two mode into one mode. That is one thing. That's how one can analyze. It's a whole topic. You know, we need another entire session on this, I think. So the other thing can be,
You know, bimodal would be pretty common in education.
I mean, two mode.
Two mode.
yeah.
Two mode. Yeah.
For example, what kind like same? I think the author paper network is also a two-mode network.
Yeah.
So you could do two mode by which,
Papers,
yeah,
authors and
by
papers.
authors.
Yeah.
You could do a teachers network, teachers by schools.
Right.
You
Teachers
could
by
do-
schools.
You could do families by social services.
Yeah. So it's
So there's a lot of the, Blake, a lot of this would work on your stuff.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
yeah, it's and a whole chapter is dedicated for this in this book as well, and as well you can find Borgati's work on two-mode networks. There are a whole new set of measures like two-mode network centrality. We are analyzing the two modes together. They are giving many approaches like the dual projection approach and new centrality measures for this. So there is an entire discussion on this two-mode networks. But here because we are just talking about basics, so there is one slide right now. But yeah, we can go in depth if required. We can have another session on this on entirely on two-mode networks. Yeah.
So to relate this, Blake, to your work, if you had families W, X, Y, Z, and you had, let's say, different social services or places that families go to for resources.
There's
Yeah.
your
Okay,
two mode.
that's two mode. And what he's saying, I think, is that you could then switch it to a one mode.
One mode.
It's basically saying which families go to the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
But that seemed to fit your scenario in
Yeah.
Eastern Europe perfectly.
yeah. I think when we'll come on the software part, then so the software workshops, the analysis part, so these things can be, you can have an hands-on experience on working. That will be more interesting, I think, instead of just seeing this like with a slide or something.
It won't be more interesting, it will be differently interesting.
Yeah, differently. Interesting. Yeah, put it that way. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So let's move forward. Okay, some other concepts which we need a step or a walk. Yeah. So I've got a variety of slides. Some are like really ugly kind of slides. Some are like good ones, like these ones, so with some animations. Yeah. So you see, it's a network of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people connected to each other. So Kate and Jack Shepherd are connected with one step, one link. So there is one step from Kate to Jack Shepherd, and then if Kate for example, some information or some piece of advice or something is flowing in the network, something wants to move from Kate to Christian, so that will go. It will take another step, 1 and 2 steps. Yeah.
And
So-
this assumes that Christian and Jack are talking to one another, as opposed to being estranged.
Christian and? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I'm just carrying your analogy.
That it's an active.
That it's an active
connection.
network, yeah.
Active network, yeah, yeah. Like I said, I mean, it's we are assuming that something is flowing. Maybe something is flowing. It's a pipe or something is flowing
Yeah, I'm just amused at the names and the reference to the TV show.
Yeah. Yeah, this is taken from Ian McCullough's slides. Ian McCullough, if you know that guy. Hi, sir.
This is Vance Randall.
Pleasure to meet you. Hi, sir. Same here. Thank you so much.
So Vince is our policy, Scott is our law.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So, see? So there are 2 steps from Kate to Christian. So we say walk is a series of steps from one node to another. So this is one walk from Kate to Christian.
And this is a 2-step walk.
Yeah. And then we talk about paths. So you see the nodes can be connected. For example, Kate, if something wants to move from Kate to Christian, it can take this path as well as this path. There are many paths. Okay, so some can be long, some can be short. So in order to reach, see, yeah, this is one path from Kate. Something moves from Kate to Jack, then from Jack to Aaron, Aaron to Claire, and Claire to Christian. This is a path of 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So distance is 4. But this is a longest path. We have a concept of a shortest path. See? So for example, coming back to this one, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, a distance of 4. But we have a short path as well, right? From Kate to Jack and Jack to Christian, 2 steps. That is a short path, shortest path. This is the shortest path is called a geodesic path. So why we are concerned with geodesic path? Because there is one measure called closeness centrality, in which we are talking about these geodesic distances. So if a node has on average less geodesic distance to all other nodes in the network, that means the information or knowledge tends to flow to that node quickly and early. Yeah? So it's all about distances.
Does it tend to, or is it just that it can? Because again, if I'm looking at this example here,
Yeah.
I know something of the personal history of each of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that some of these characters, even though they share these paths,
Yeah.
or sorry, that they share these nodes, these links, they are not, those steps are not taken very frequently.
Yeah.
So even though they're geodesic, it wouldn't necessarily always stand that those information flows would go there first rather than taking a more roundabout path.
Mm-hmm.
How do you account for that? Or is that even something?
So you're saying that it can also take a long path, right?
Well, what I'm saying is that it may
take
even
a
though
long-
Jack and Christian share that
Yeah.
link,
Yeah.
that link may not be one that is used very often.
Used very often, yeah, you're right.
Or, because
Maybe.
even though it's not represented here, that could be a negative link
Correct.
rather than a
Yeah.
positive link.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the directional flow, I could see that being something that would
Yes.
change the ability of that path to become
Yeah.
geodesic.
So mostly, I think we are concerned with this because the terminology in social networks is talking about the shortest paths.
Right,
you know?
okay,
Yeah.
so yeah. and
Can
that-
be
that's the thing.
long paths
For
as
the
well.
purposes of this lecture, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, you're just kind of giving us a broad conceptual.
Yeah,
overview. I
yeah,
think
conceptual
maybe-
overview, yeah. But yeah, the context, it can vary from context to context. For example, yeah, you're right. It can take the longest path as well. When we discuss about components, we can see there is another slide coming up in which we talk about components. So nodes, anything, it can move from any path.
Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, so geodesic path. So the question is, what is the geodesic path between Kate and Claire? Kate and Claire.
It's a tie.
Yeah.
No,
They're gonna
no,
go through.
Aaron to Claire.
Aaron to Kate to Aaron and Aaron to Claire. 2 steps and the distance is 2.
Right.
So the geodesic,
Paths are both 3.
yeah. See? So it's not very clear. So Kate to Aaron, Aaron to Claire, 2 steps, geodesic distance of 2. Yeah? one. There is. So this one is now a matrix of geodesic distances. It's another hypothetical network. You can see A and B are one step apart. So distance is 1. Yeah. So in the matrix we have 1. A and C, 1, 2, and so on. A and E, 1, 2, and A and F can be this longest path as well, 1, 2, 3, 4. But no, the geodesic path is 1, 2, 3,
Right.
and geodesic distance is 3. So this matrix is filled with geodesic distances. See, so again, we can have.
So if there, in a case like this, if there happens to be, even though there's a geodesic path from A to F,
Yeah.
if there's some sort of disruption between B and E, we
Yeah.
know, yeah.
So the network will be, yeah, that's these are the concepts of centrality, in which one some key player is, if like they discussed an example of a terrorist network, if you kill the key player,
Absolutely.
the network is disrupted, yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, that is a key player analysis. Yeah, I think we will discuss that in centrality analysis coming up in data analysis. I think session 5, yeah. Okay, so component, another concept is component. We talk about maximal set of, now we can talk about, okay, any path. Maximal set of nodes in which every node can reach every other node by some path, no matter how long. Every node is connected to every other node by a path. So you can see this. There are 2 graphs. First ones are the directed graphs. Second is the undirected graph. So you can see B, C, D, E can all be connected with each other following these directionality of ties. So something can reach. So this is one connected component.
The black.
The black one, yeah. See, B, C, all can be connected if you follow the links. Even something can flow from D to E and E to A, but from A it cannot come back because there is no direction involved. In this direction, there is nothing flowing from A to E. So A is a connected component in its own self. So here we talk about, and on the right hand side we have got again G, H, and F. G and H are connected components, and F is a connected component in its own self. Yeah. In terms of undirected networks, we just have a concept of a connected component. See?
Introduce you to Dr. Kamal.
Hi, sir.
Hi, I'm Tim Smith.
Hi, Kamal.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for presenting.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. So you can get this concept, yeah? Is it clear? The concept components. So here there is no direction involved. So this is one component. A, B, C, D, E, F are all in one component because there is no directionality involved. They are all connected to each other. Here F, G, and H are one component. So we will have in USINET we will do some exercises in which I think this concept will be more clear when we'll do the strong and weak components for directed and undirected networks. You will see what happens in that. See? Okay. Okay, so another question is, when is the network? The temporal aspects of a network which are nowadays studied. This is one slide from Daniel McFarland's class. Daniel McFarland from Stanford, I think. No, from Harvard or Stanford, I forgot about that. Anyways, it's one of his classes, and he mapped the network. Oh, yeah. So it's his class network. So you can see after 1 minute, after 5 minutes, after 10, after 35 minutes. So the point is that time is involved. So you can see this network building up as we move up in the time window. So firstly there were maybe segregated kind of networks. Then they start to gel And finally, after 35 minutes, they are a network. So the question is, when is the network? The time factors are also involved. So we need to define a unit of time for the relationship. In co-authorship studies, which we did, like we have a time window, 2000, like for example, 2005 to 2018. So that's a time window. See? So when is the network? So these temporal boundaries or temporal aspects need to be studied as well. So there are specifically stochastic actor-oriented models are some methods which actually do this longitudinal analysis. Here it's just a simple analysis, like what happens after 35 minutes in a class. Yeah.
This would be like the evolution.
Evolution.
Of the network.
Evolution of the network.
One of the research I did was a 2002 head teacher network in Africa. And again in 2008, how were they connected? And you could see how that network changed in those 6 years.
In those 6 years.
So I could see this would be interesting.
Yeah. So, okay, this is, last we have a question for all of you. But you can see this is some slide I look like, because I'm a management scholar, so I've compiled this kind of a list. Application every field of management. In human resource and organizational behavior, we talk about workplace networks. Social network analysis has its applications in every field of management. In operations, we talk about supply chain networks. And in strategy, we talk about strategic alliance networks. Marketing is word of mouth networks, international business, international trade network. Banking and finance, interbank market networks. And research or organizational behavior or education, we talk about our favorite scientific collaboration or co-authorship network. So there was a question, application of SNA in educational leadership and foundation and instructional psychology and technology departments. Some of the ideas you have already discussed with me, what kind of stuff is coming up or what kind of stuff you want to do in which you can really apply these concepts. Yeah. So this was just any other ideas, any other projects coming up?
From your various departments.
From the various departments.
What kinds of example network might you study?
Obviously, in policy and law, it'd be interesting to look at the networks of how people get information about a certain thing or interact. Then the legislature passes a new law or a new requirement, and then over time then say, well, did it change what we thought it was going to change, or are the same old friendship relationships still getting the same old information, even though they said now you're supposed to report sexual harassment in this way? But we, in the past, the way we did it was this way, and do we leapfrog or not? So clearly it would work. It'd be fascinating in policy and law.
Yeah.
So how legislation would affect communication networks?
Well, and Vance is always looking at, yes, that's part of it. Vance is always looking at policy from the lens of, regularly looking at policy from the lens of what were the intended outcomes of this policy? What are the actual outcomes? Well, you could do it by the network of those who are supposed to apply the policy before and after, in part.
And who are the drivers of policy? Are there a few key people that everyone kind of tunes into, or is it more dispersed?
Yeah.
And did it do what you intended it to do? We intended to set up a watchdog group to take care of this or whatever, if you understand the term watchdog group, that they're supposed to funnel all allegations of, say, sexual harassment through this type of person, and we set that up, we made that law. But afterwards, are they still connecting or not?
Yeah.
Tim or Blake, any other thoughts?
I'm interested in social networks broadly with respect to health and mental health variables. And so I haven't defined a specific project, but I'm absolutely interested in the method, so then I can know how to then formulate questions that fit the method.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm in that process.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Blake
perfect.
brought up some things
So
that
the
would be interesting.
coming sessions will be, I think, very interesting for you when we formally work on USINET data sets. It's pretty like it will be hands-on workshops coming up. Yeah, so you have this. If you have the schedule, you can. I hope to see you in the coming sessions. Yeah. So the guys who are planning to attend the other sessions and other guys, I think you have already put up this notice, yeah? To install USINet in your laptops and
It's on the flyer, so when you come
Yeah.
to data analysis sessions, you'll want to
data
install
for the data analysis session, you need to have the USINet program installed, and that is they offer the 30 days free trial version, so that will be just okay for this for these workshops. Yeah.
Do you have anything everywhere you
I was about to say, is there any
Oh,
institutional anything?
No, we don't
not-
have institutional
So-
licenses.
No, it's free for 30 days, and
free for
then it's
30
very
days.
inexpensive for scholars.
Oh, good.
Even if you purchase them, they're less than $100.
Yeah, it's $40, I think.
Yeah, like $40 for a license.
And it's a great software, you know. It's USINet. Yeah, it's a great software.
So one project, so we talked about replicating these networks of head teachers, 2002, 2008. But that basically preceded, in this portion of East Africa, mobile communications technologies. So these connections, we always assumed that these connections were, that the further away you are geographically, that your network connections became thinner because you couldn't meet face to face.
Yeah.
But I would love to replicate one of those in terms of what kind of moderating influence has cell phone technology made in the ability to exchange knowledge and resources. Because they're still geographically constrained in terms of road infrastructure, et cetera. But now every teacher and every administrator that we interact with in Africa has one, sometimes two or three cell phones. And so they have a different number depending on what network they're connecting into. And what does that do in terms of now who you're connected to, whether you're 50 miles away or 2 kilometers away?
So you that data set you were talking about us like from 2000 up till 2008 every year, like 2000
No, just.
or just 2000 or 2008.
2008.
Nothing in between. Yeah. Yeah. If you had something in between, you can have some very good longitudinal. We can apply some longitudinal techniques like stochastic actor-oriented models on that data set. Yeah.
You had some interesting institutional interventions in that period of time that made it difficult.
Yeah. Okay, so this is just another very famous slide from Rob Cross. So it says that actually SNA is and provides an X-ray into inner workings of an organization. So you on the left-hand side you can see a typical hierarchy of an oil company. So Jones is the senior vice president, and then they map the relationships of advice. On the right-hand side, you can see Jones, who's actually the senior vice president, is actually actually here in the periphery of the network. See, so we can infer things from such analysis. It's just nothing causal has been tested. It's just a kind of a applied kind of an analysis. So basically, these guys I think they do these SNA consulting for the organizations. So they just produce one of those graphs which they mapped.
It's like the one I mentioned at UNESCO.
Yeah.
UNESCO looked like, they said it was on the left.
Okay.
That's how it really was.
Yeah. So that is those invisible networks getting visible. So there is an entirely new, different discussion that how to collect data. So whether it's a real depiction of the invisible networks or not. What are the ethical issues about data? We will discuss something in the data research design and data collection session. Yeah. So we can see Cole, who was actually at the bottom of the hierarchy. He's a very central guy when it comes to advice. Yeah.
I've done a similar thing in schools.
Okay.
Where you set, because the schools have teams, right? And then they have the team leaders who are a group. So there is a structure, and then you ask, who do you go to for help with instruction? And it often looks very different than the hierarchy.
Yeah, that's the little article called "Who You Gonna Call."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd think you'd want to also explore, well, who in your organization is Muslim? Maybe they see each other. who in your organization is giving service in, say, the Boy Scouts Association. That might be, some things that you didn't recognize, that's why they get together there, and that, and one of the trusted people in their organization is bringing them together, and you didn't account for that in the slightest when you made your chart of organizational structure.
I know it was taken from like another place. Yeah. So you can see.
These sorts of things hit into ed leadership pretty central. I mean,
Yeah.
this would be core.
Yeah. So this is one of the utilities of social networks, which they discussed here. Something about causality and network research. So you
can I bring up a negative, ugly one? You could use this for who's bullying whom, who's harassing whom, and you could get other people to tell you who's harassing whom or who's bullying whom. And it seems like this social network, it would be a different kind of interview, could be used that way, and we would find, I'll bet, if we mapped it out with enough data sets, we would find, for example, that those who sexually assault others will choose kids of single mothers, or choose kids who have, some things would become visible if we were to do bullying behavior and or sexual harassment behavior. And I don't know how you would quite, who have you seen bullying whom might be a way you would interview or something. I don't know. Maybe the instrument would still work on that.
There's a lot of stuff that been done on negative ties. So bullying and harassment is one of those. I have seen many papers on that.
Good.
And
that would fit in schools.
Yeah, and it's the way they frame the question, like the dislike ties. If they want to map the dislike ties, they don't just ask who do you dislike. Maybe they ask who do you prefer to avoid in your organization. Yeah. So for bullying, maybe they have designed some questions. I have seen work on bullying. I have been working on negative ties. There's an upcoming project. Because in my place, I think I can see a lot of these negative networks being part of, being at play in my workplace, at my workplace. So, yeah.
Then you can kind of find maybe some of the sources, and they need to be trained or they need to be removed or something.
So if someone is central in a negative tie network, so that is one of the players you want to remove actually from the network. Yeah. Yeah, it's. I think I can share lots of stuff on bullying and stuff. These negative ties specifically, yeah. So this can be very, especially bullying can be studied. Social network aspects of bullying can be studied. Yeah, all this analysis, typical analysis of negative ties. It's a lot of work going on from Lubyanka, University of Kentucky, Harrigan, Singapore Management University. I think he's now at. In Australia, he switched, I think, but these guys are the key players. Yeah. So yeah. Okay, so as we can see, so research has explored the antecedents and consequences of network variables. Both in some instances, you can see network variables as independent variables. Sometimes you can see them as dependent variables. So. This is something from Borgatti again. He says that if your independent variable is a network property and your dependent variable is also a network property, so he calls it a network theory of networks. That is something some terms he has coined. And if your independent variable is a network property and your dependent variable is a non-network property, and it falls in network theory domain, and then independent variable is a non-network property and dependent variable is a network property, that is theory of networks. And if both independent and dependent variables are non-network properties, that is the same old-fashioned conventional research. Yeah. So I already discussed about the level of analysis, dyads, node level and group level. There are some studies which report like independent and dependent variables and the causality directions at all level of analysis. So if you can see this slide, and you can see if some We already discussed some things. For example, in some instances we have, at dyad level we have independent variable as a network tie, and the dependent variable as a non-network variable, such as attribute similarity. So for example, friends leading to similar political attitudes, yeah? Or for example, smoking. Dependent side, on the dependent side we have a network tie of friendships, and on the independent side we have some attribute variable. Maybe people who smoke tend to form friendship ties, yeah. And we already discussed about the proximity hypothesis. Both, in that instance, both were network ties, right? So people whose offices are close, maybe they are likely to form friendship ties. Similar are node level very famous hypothesis, centrality leading to performance. Like for example, in my research, we had our research, we had centrality positively impacting. We hypothesized that centrality positively impacts research performance of authors in a co-authorship network. Yeah, and then we have at the group level various hypotheses as well. This will be discussed in more detail in session 6, data analysis 3, when we'll formally do this analysis on USINet. Yeah.
Can I just ask, what's prop women? I mean, the property of being a woman, what's prop women to lead to the density of trust ties?
So proportion of women?
Is that proportion?
Yeah.
Second to last on the far right.
Yeah, proportion of women.
Group attribute, yeah.
Yeah, it's a group attribute.
So it's the proportion of women deals with makes an impact on the density of trust ties
Yeah.
in the network. Okay.
In the network,
Thanks.
yeah. So that is at group level of analysis, on the whole network level of analysis. There are, we discussed 3 levels of analysis initially in the slide. So this is very famous. There's a document compiled by Daniel Brass, another guru of SNA at University of Kentucky. So if I think the hyperlink was not really working. Let me just open it from here. So I can share this with you guys as well. So there is a lot of, he has compiled this whole list of studies of antecedents and consequences of social networks in organizations. So this list can be very, you can use this like for a literature review or something if you are interested in. So you can see antecedent, physical and temporal proximity as an antecedent has been explored. Workflow and hierarchy has been explored in various studies. Actor similarity, homophily, very famous hypothesis. This has been explored. Personality traits as an antecedent has been explored as well. And we have then we have these consequences of social networks. So all this list you can see. I will share this with you. It's a whole big list. Yeah. So maybe some of these studies will also be on in education or something. Yeah, education field.
Or at least I can see them being in the reference lists to maybe current education articles. So yeah, it's just.
Yeah, I'm aware of research where in higher ed leadership they've looked at faculty offices and that people tend to co-author with people and collaborate together with people that are close to them in faculty offices and faculty suites, and so people have tried to decide we need to change the physical structure even though we have this electronic superstructure of cybers and cyber connections and things. And so that must be related to his work, I'm assuming, physical proximity.
Proximity, yeah. Proximity impact, yeah. Yeah. So this information, this is some of this might not be updated, but there's some information about social networks. INSNA, International Network for Social Network Analysis, is the premier body. It conducts a Sunbelt conference every year as well. So this year I think their conference is in Netherlands. Yeah. last year was in China, where one of my students presented the same paper with banks and investment, 2 more networks paper.
What's I find interesting about this conference, many of the conferences we go to are content-based, right? An education policy conference, for example.
Yeah.
And so everyone that goes is studying this particular concept or construct using all kinds of different methods.
Yeah.
But here, what unites people is the method.
The method, social networks.
Yeah, and they're applying
Various
it
fields.
in a whole variety of
It's
different
fun.
places, and you
Yeah.
see so many examples of
They're
studies.
always fascinating.
Even neural networks. I mean,
Yeah.
neural networks. I met I'm a neurophysicist in 2014 in Florida. See, so management scholars, psychologists,
Yeah.
sociologists,
You see
education
applied so many
educationists.
ways.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
So this is a list of SNA research centers. Maybe you can add more to this. Well, the famous ones are Link Center, obviously University of Kentucky, where I want to go. I don't know how will I end up there.
Speaking of network, what school would say the network governance center be in at Harvard? Do you know? Would that be in business? Would that be in the Kennedy School? Would that be in the School of Education? Where's network governance going to be housed?
I don't know.
Is that just 1 or 2 faculty members?
Look it up.
Because that would be an
Okay,
interesting network
yeah.
study too, because I'll bet there's not a structure in the university in some places that says, oh, we need a center on network research.
I think it's more focused to, there is one guy, particularly from education, McFarland, whose slide I showed here. He's an educationist. He is doing SNA in education. So I think he's part of this group, I think so. But I'm not so sure. I will check it out for you. There are other various centers. The Mitchell Center is very famous in Manchester. Melnet in University of Melbourne in Australia. And then we have some conferences we already talked about. Some of them are, I think some of them are discontinued. They don't, like the UK Social Networks Conference, they don't operate anymore, I think. They used to operate every year, but now they have changed something, changed their name or something, I think. And there are some other conferences that are like SNA or Sunbelt, I already told you. There are some annual workshops. University of Kentucky holds a workshop every year, which I again want to attend. So I think I will miss again this year. But maybe, maybe next year or maybe someday, sometime. And these are the resources, all the softwares, books. Some of them, again, is not really updated. I need to bring this book in this list, as well as Rob Cross book and some other stuff. But the famous software is USANET, which we will be working on. Very famous, which is used, and you can see top-tiered publications being done while they use USANET for analysis. Like in my field, even the journal, Academy of Management journal, there's these kind of top journals. They have actually used USANET for data analysis. It's very powerful software. Not so good for really large networks, really big networks. But for like our research, social sciences, education, it's perfect. It's really good and really powerful.
I will point out that the bottom of the first column, the UCINet listserv, if you go back,
Yeah.
right there, this listserv, you can ask any question about the software. I'm trying to do this with my data, or
Yes.
is there, and you get answers.
And you get answers from
so good.
either Borgatti or from Everett. So all the top guys, they
Yeah.
just quickly answer. And you can also join the SOCNET list server, which we are also part of. And you keep on seeing my emails,
I do.
in which I
It's a great.
and I get good response from the very good response from the
It's a
top
very
guys.
collaborative group, I think, because we're united by the method. Right? We're not competing for
Not seen as competitors.
concept space.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting study in itself.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I didn't get time to compile a reading list, but I will do that for you guys. Some bibliography. In the end, I can compile a whole list. I will try to get as much as I can from the education domain. So something the co-authorship studies I already have a lot of stuff which I can discuss with in the last session 7 on Thursday. Yeah. So yeah, so that sums it up, I think. So questions, comments, or suggestions, something.
Any general
Anything you-
questions around
Yes, sir.
projects you're thinking of?
I'm just thinking, so, I was just with a group of people this weekend that we're bound by the fact that from the years 1966 to about 1977, we've artificially limited ourselves. We lived in Bolivia and did missionary work. And they alleged to me that you can get in touch with anyone you used to know now in Bolivia by Facebook. Now, I think they're wrong, because some of the places I was at didn't have electricity or telegraph or anything, but I don't know. So it feels to me like that it would be interesting to study in places that are exiting from being developing countries, or that are starting to have infrastructure of relatively cheap cell phone. My daughter yesterday called some people in the Mosquito area of Nicaragua because they have cheap cell, and she called and said, what was it like when they announced this certain thing? And they could tell them in real time. And I've been there. A cell phone costs $6, if you're walking around, which I don't know how that compares though to income there. I think it's not that big a challenge.
Part of the reason why they might be asserting on the Facebook is that in a lot of developing countries you can get these cheap phones, but they are Facebook phones.
Oh.
And so you literally, Facebook is your internet.
Right, and
Service
then they use
provider.
Wi-Fi at the chapels for phone calling and
Right.
things.
And so that's actually, given Facebook's recent struggles
Yeah,
politically, why it's become a hot topic, because in many parts of the world, and that's how their number counts have gone up, how many billion people use it, because they have subsidized the low-cost sale of cell phones that can only use Facebook.
okay, that would be it.
So
So it
that
seems
might
like
be
these
part of the
emerging
thing.
technologies and newcomers to connecting, what binds them? So I'm constantly in contact with people in Nicaragua, I have more long-term connections to Bolivia, but I was in Nicaragua more recently, and these are people whose houses you can literally see through and see,
Yeah.
you can see daylight and things, but they're in connection. So it just seems like there's a way to look at it. Newcomers to connections and networking, and what binds them, and how technology impacts in ways we didn't anticipate. Part of that, of course, because the country doesn't make anymore a commitment to a network structure that's based on landlines or based on other kinds of infrastructure.
What kinds of consequences are of interest in your various areas?
Sorry, can I get a picture?
Oh, sure.
Blake, what are you looking?
Yeah, I mean, as far as looking at the impact of social network size on how families do, and if we can use social networks as more of a foundation for creating interventions. So if we can work within the social networks to deliver parenting messages and parent trainings, that's kind of what I'm looking at anyway.
So both what is it that helps these networks to form?
Yeah,
That's one
and
question.
what can we do, like experimentally, to form these
Right.
networks?
But then what's the result of these networks?
Yeah.
Or what function they can play in the delivery?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Tim, what kind of consequences or dependent concepts would there be in your area?
Man. So I'm shifting more to family research, and of course families are networks. And so I'm brand new into that area, and I'm seriously just starting to wrap my mind
Exploring.
around
Yeah.
what needs to happen. But one of our initial projects is going to be on marital fidelity, and so I don't know quite how to model that.
It'll be dyadic, I guess, sort of.
You'd hope.
Yes,
There'll
we'd
be some
hope.
informal plans.
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, Jim.
Sorry. Your research idea, what was that? I didn't.
So I'm just shifting my research into family studies, which I haven't done before, and so I'm needing this method to analyze those data, but I don't know quite yet what questions to ask. But one of the first topics that we will be looking into is marital fidelity.
Oh,
So sexual
okay.
fidelity
Okay.
as married couples. And so what are factors that predict and maintain fidelity? I want to look at it in positive terms. What maintains marital fidelity over time.
Yeah, like this dyadic level, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely dyadic at the center, but on the other hand, what is the family network, or
Right.
what is an extended network
Yeah, what supports
Yeah.
the
that
family?
might
Yeah.
affect, might be as an antecedent?
Because it could be part of, what type of larger familiar or friendship network are you embedded in that leads to the
Forces.
consequence of fidelity in marriage?
Right.
Right.
What's the nature of that larger support, information flow?
Yeah, it's all systemic. So.
It'd be interesting because you could study that in traditional, right? Fidelity, yes or no, right? In other words, it doesn't have to be a network dyad if you're just looking at traditional kinds of antecedents to just this, is there fidelity or not?
Right.
So it would be interesting to say, where is that dyad placed? What's the location of that dyad within a such and such network? Then it would become kind of the network,
Yeah,
more of a network question.
For example, the LDS Church has done research that we've heard back, but we haven't seen the delicate research, that says youth that have good friends who intend to do a certain type of marriage, temple marriage, are more likely to have temple marriage. That connection to having their friends or their best friends have a commitment to, or having been married in the temple, has more impact than a whole lot of other variables on whether or not they marry in the temple, which is a type of fidelity in a sense. Relatively few LDS temple marriages end in divorce.
It's at very least an intention to fidelity.
Right, I think that's
There you
in
go.
that research,
Right.
was an intention.
Yeah.
So what is the nature of
So
that?
what are their friends, what do the men's friends think is cool and talk about informally and share, yeah. Which could take you back to Facebook, misusing Facebook.
Vance, what are you looking at? Consequences?
Well, we're going to try to get this database on co-authors, net policy studies. I get that analyzed and written up. The other is, I have a student, doctoral student, looking at the Common Core, which was an education initiative that caused a lot of division. And one way we might analyze the data is to find out who were the key players on both sides of those in favor of the education initiative and Common Core, and those who were opposed.
How about the switchers,
Yeah,
And-
like Louisiana and Jindal?
Yeah,
But what would be the relation?
within the state of Utah.
So how are they connected to each other?
So how are they connected? Who was really the driving force behind the opposition, and who was the driving force behind being an advocate for this initiative?
This
what
was a very
conferences do they
fractious.
attend?
It started as a state level initiative. Federal dollars came in, which then allowed the attribution of it being a federal program versus a state program.
Okay. So we're looking at political culture in Utah, and also what are the backgrounds of those who chose one side or the other?
So you'd have to collect the data then.
Yep.
I think the people in CPSE should be interested in this, because when it comes to counseling, psychology, and special education as a department,
Tim.
when it comes to specialized education that's required under law in the United States, it's a quasi-psychological, quasi-medical, very expert-driven kind of analysis. And it appears that sometimes people jump right over whoever is assigned to guide them on this and go to whoever's an old-timer or whoever knows a lot about it. And so it would feel like that would really expose a lot, understanding how people develop policies and procedures in specialized, individualized education. And so I would think someone in CPSE might find that fascinating. Because, yeah, there's a structure set up, but it doesn't always follow.
Mike, what are the questions or
Consequences.
consequences?
The consequences. I mean, obviously, it's leveraging the power of the profoundly larger group of people who are the people served by schools. We study leadership as influence predominantly in one direction, and yet the influence of what goes on in schools is profoundly affected by the actions of the parents, the teachers, the other folks who are not seen as traditionally the ones who are carrying out influence. I'd love to see how it is that those networks are happening informally. Who is it that are the teachers who are either helping to reinforce or who are undermining the efforts of principals at schools? Who is it that are on school community councils who are able to bring to bear the values of the community in what's going on in the schools and mitigating that as far as how a school is able to then carry out different initiatives, policies, and whatnot, those kinds of things.
A lot of the work that he's doing also is related to diversity.
Right.
And so, am I right in thinking diversity would be like the attribute, the node level?
We could look at it
Yeah.
in terms of the social capital that either
Yeah.
is present or is lacking within those networks as well.
Diversity in what sense? Like,
Diversity in terms of race, ethnicity,
Race, ethnicity.
socioeconomic status,
Yeah.
those kinds of
so
things.
like homophily or heterophily concept, yeah.
Correct,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
That can be applied in social networks.
Correct, yeah, I mean,
aspects.
those kinds of things, just to say, who is it that's basically present in the conversation, but we actually aren't seeing them in the conversation. This kind of analysis, I would think, would suddenly bring to light. It's almost like looking at the spectrum. We're very good at looking at problems through the spectrum of visible light, but this brings infrared into the picture, and may provide a profoundly different heat map to
Okay.
what's going on.
It's a nice analogy.
So when Hispanic parents
Mhm.
perceive a problem at school, is there a structure of the Catholic Church, say,
Absolutely.
that they can go to a lay Catholic leader that's been around for a while and connect or whatever? Because they're not going to phone the school if they don't speak English. They're not going to walk in if they're not documented. So I could see for Hispanics, it could really help.
We intuit all of this.
Yeah.
It's just a social
And
network.
just Native Americans, and just all kinds of infrared light would light up and show maybe a network.
Absolutely.
And others would show fear of ICE, that they won't even open their door now, you know, or whatever. ICE or their Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials.
And some of the parental involvement literature does get into that. Does qualitatively kind of point to certain variables that we may want to consider. Some of those being the clergy, some of those being family networks, and so on.
One of the challenges, it seems to me though, is you've got to do the work on the ground to get someone to respond to you, to make an evaluation. And some of them are really hard to get to. Could I talk to children? Could I get the IRB approval to talk to children about bullying? Maybe the school could, and then they could report it. Could I get into the door to talk to someone who I am convinced is an undocumented Hispanic person? Well, you know, the part of the challenge is going to be how to get the data before we'd work on it.
It's always the question. Can you get the
Which
data?
I'm assuming if we were to collaborate, that maybe we would look for data sets and places and help do the interview/survey/whatever to get the regular data, and you would help us pull out good questions and what the data can tell us, if that were the way that we could do it that direction. Or I guess you could go the other direction, we could be interested in the data set you have.
From a logic of theory development and testing kind of a thing, what we would have here is testing at scale, quantitative measures that we've developed in field, and saying we posit that this relationship exists, that this network exists, that this strength of that relationship exists. Is that in fact the case? Doing a numerical analysis and asking questions relating in that way is at least how I see it. But
That begs the question, is this approach qualitative or quantitative?
Yeah.
That's the philosophical
It certainly
question.
should cycle into more qualitative. Once you see it, you should then be trying to go, wait a minute.
That is that it bridges that gap, because it does look numerically at things that we have been talking about in a qualitative sense. That it says it posits strengths, which
It's
are.
using the quantitative data.
Right.
But I think philosophically, would it be ontologically more qualitative?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Because usually, again, when I first heard about this, I was thinking of the networks of Utah rural schools, and who's connected and who's not. Well, why? Is there a geological barrier? Is there a physical barrier? Or is there some other, network? And well, since I know it, as I see that, and I saw it from another data set, if you remember, I start trying to make meaning out of it. I try to make theory out of it and say, why is that person so central and that person less central? When you know it, then you want to go out and kind of try to find out.
Yeah. See, it's that's the very quality.
Either because you go back down and look even deeper at the data you got in qualitative analysis, getting the original data, or now you follow back and do more interviews?
So I think the general idea of looking at a network and getting characteristics of that network would tend to look more qualitative.
Right.
In other words, describing this one network.
Yeah, very descriptive.
But one thing that Kamal's addressed is that we can do it at different levels of analysis.
Right.
And at certain levels of analysis, it does become a quantitative
Right.
question.
Yeah. Coming to the qualitative discussion you're talking about, specifically, can we call it more ethnographic or something? Because sometimes I've seen before going to into network data collection, researchers normally do an ethnographic kind of study, and then they start collecting network data. So that's what you mean about when you say qualitative?
That's kind of where I'm seeing it, yeah. I kind of look, broadly speaking, at a qualitative data collection is more inductive, more on the ground,
Yeah,
more building of theory.
yeah, building,
Quantitative
yeah.
work would then come back in and test
Yeah.
those theories at scale.
Yeah.
And but what and I think that's consistent with what you're talking about here, is saying that we would traditionally, you might be looking at these kinds of questions ethnographically.
Yeah.
But what this can do is bring to bear, in advance of doing them as separate activities, saying, well, okay, we've got a tool here that can help us not only look at maybe themes, but also dive deep into say, are there patterns within those themes that can be quantified?
Yeah.
Because you can't measure centrality.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Paths, steps,
Absolutely.
walks.
Yeah, and it's nice because then it kind of says they can be done temporally,
Right.
simultaneously, which is something that is not as easy to do when you look at it as a qualitative, quantitative.
Because see, that can get back to Blake's
Right.
stuff where you, like say, you can get into steps, walks, paths,
Yeah,
in order to achieve what you're trying to, what's the consequence you're after?
right,
What's the nature of the network? How does one then redesign it
yeah.
to decrease the steps or?
Or to strengthen the ties
Right.
between potentially closer steps.
Well, along the way, it feels like you're also doing theory development, or else theory selection. You've got a literature base you've been reading, and then you go, well, I would have expected to see
Yes.
this based
Yes.
on these things.
Exactly.
But I'm not seeing that now. What's my theory based on the literature that's available? But I don't have something on this.
Yeah,
And then you can go out and
to
test it.
suggest
Yeah.
a corollary.
So it makes a foundation for you or your next students' further qualitative research.
Correct.
Yeah, I think the more complete study will be ethnographic study first, and then
Yeah.
coming to the network analysis part afterwards. Network data collection and analysis later. Yeah, that will be more complete.
Then you have the
That will be
data set,
complete
you can
study.
decide whether it's interesting or not, or it could completely confirm what you thought before.
Yeah.
You know, now you know.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Thank you, Kamal. We really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Terrific.
much. Thank you so much for